Hello, YouTube. Let's bring in our Twitch people and we'll get this ball rolling here. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and it is a Thursday night, the last day of November of 2023, November 30th, that would be. I hope everybody's doing well. My vision continues to degrade at a remarkable rate. I'm going to look into LASIK because I used to think, well, doing all this flying, what I really need is far vision, not so much worried about the near vision. Then I realized I haven't looked outside the window in probably 7 or 8 years. So I'm going to look into the LASIK, but I'm not interested in really. I don't want to pay that kind of money, so I'm just gonna do it myself. I'm gonna get one of those cat toy lasers, and I'm gonna experiment. Obviously, I'm gonna basically take it and I got a machine, like I got a laser print, kind of like this very, very slightly sloping conical section. And I'm gonna take about, I don't know, I just did the rough math, I think 80 will do it. I take like 80 of these laser cat toys and string them around there like that. And all come down to this one point, and then I'm going to just really carefully, and I like a monitor over there, and I'm just going to, see if I can do it myself. And if it turns out I screw it up, then I'll just go and have it done professionally. But, there's a lot to be said for do-it-yourself kind of attitude about things. We've mentioned this 100,000 times for those of you who've not seen the show live, but the walk-in music for this show is I Know a Place by Petula Clark. I just made a note for myself to get Animato, which is where I first heard the song, and a little bit about Mike Jitlove up on Ephemera on the new website. I've heard that song. Well, I just posted episode 378. This is probably episode 383 or something like that. I'm so far behind. I'll get on that after the show tonight too. But I've heard this. I've heard I Know a Place. I've heard it no less than 350 times. And every single time I hear it, I still just love it. I just love it. I love especially those trumpets that they have. Bum, 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 bum. It's really great. And we got a great crowd of people here. Our regular gang's all stumbling in, and man, that makes me happy. Also, just on this particular night, we usually run a bunch of TV shows and kind of nostalgia and things like that. I'm going to have to, in my frequent spare time, but I'm going to be spending a lot more productive time now that the site's open. We'll get to that in a second, too. I'm going to have to redo a version of that, and I'll probably include the picture like we do on Stratosphere Studio. There's lots and lots and lots of shows that I hadn't seen. Hey, although, I think I've still got it here downloaded. Hang on a second. If not, I'll get it. Because I've decided I want to open, not the Stratosphere Lounge. I've given serious thought about this. Even if it costs me monetization, I'd have to look into how much money I'd be losing, mind you. But it got such a reaction that I almost think it'd be worth it. Not the Petula thing. Hang on one sec, if you don't mind. Because this really rang a bell with a lot of people. Hi, everybody. So check this out. I went looking for this last time, and the comments on there almost had people crying. I just kind of mentioned it in passing on one of our shows here. You have to be a certain age for this, and if you're not, then it won't mean a damn thing. But if you are, okay, hang on. Let's get this right now. It's a very quick download because it's very short. I actually think I want to put this in front of every single one of the story mechanics, if nothing else. So just give me 1 second to download this thing. I hadn't thought about it until just now, but it's probably worth it. So hang on, here it comes. And I have to put it in both, obviously. So give me 1 more second here, almost there. Load and downloader. There it is. Yeah, it really is a very age-specific kind of thing. But I guess the power of it is that it just was such a magical thing, it was just it just what followed this was just always so freaking phenomenal for back in the day, and back in the days, it gets getting further and further, I've noticed, but that's the way things go. Okay, so here we go. Got it here. And it's hard for me to do this both at the same time. So what am I going to do here? I guess I'll just drop it into YouTube first, and then I'll drop it into Twitch. So hopefully this will just work. Again, if you're not of a certain age, this won't mean anything to you. But if you are, I really do think I'd like to put this just before every single one of the story mechanic things. All right, here it goes up on YouTube. And it's very small, and there's nothing I can do about that.
The following program is brought to you in living color on NBC.
If you're old enough to remember that,
The following program is brought to you.
everything that followed that was just awesome. It's hard for people to believe that there was a time not only before the internet, but that there was a time before color TV, and when that thing would come on, color TV was just brand new, especially for me because we didn't have color TV in Bermuda. I'd come and visit my Aunt Marty and Uncle Rock in Pennsylvania, or when we'd stop in New York City, we'd just turn on the TV and like color TV. I remember coming to a couple of trips from Bermuda to Pennsylvania on our once-a-year journey to visit our cousins, and I remember seeing color TV. I just couldn't believe my eyes. It was amazing. And we've talked about this a few times before. The shows that came out immediately on, it was right around 65, 66. So I think Lost in Space started in 65. And their first season was in black and white, and then 2 seasons in color. Star Trek, I think, started in 66, and they're color all the way through. But all of those shows, especially Star Trek, the original series, you bought a color TV, and they were crazy expensive. And if you bought a color TV and you turned it on, you wanted some color, man. Yeah, Bewitched is a great example. So on Star Trek, the original series, it's reds, and blues, and when they get to the planets, the skies are green and purple, and we used to be able to play with all that stuff. Again, this is kind of marking myself, but I don't care because this whole thing's kind of a giant nostalgia roll anyway. But back in the day, young people, you didn't just have a flat screen TV. You not only could adjust the signal by playing with the antenna, you also had total access, so you could change the vertical scroll rate, but mostly you could increase the color and you could play with the tint. And so you could take the color and you could turn it way up, and then you could take the tint and then Kirk would be green, and then he'd be purple, and then he'd be kind of an orange kind of thing. And I was like a master of getting that thing dialed in just right. But yeah, TVs used to be the kind of things where you would tune in a TV station and on the air, and half the time the picture would just roll or just skip. It would just like, come on, vertical holding. You got to lock this thing in. It's the wonders of the analog world. But I really, for a certain age group, that the following program is brought to you in living color on NBC. It was just like, here we go. So that was cool. Roger says that we've got the Northern Lights out there tonight. I flew to Norway back in 2019. I'd never seen them before. Flew to Norway, and just as I was getting ready to go, I found out that there's a Northern Lights tracker kind of thing. And I don't know what, I honestly don't remember, but on a scale of 1 to 10, they said there was like maybe a 3. And just as I was starting to head over the pole, I could see like this kind of gray haze out there. And then once I got to the point where just kind of green-gray, I could definitely tell they were the aurora, but not a whole lot of definition, so that's still something I really want to see. Anyway, we have a super chat real quick here from Bad Weather Biker, what a cool name. Columbo was the best of the early color series, magnificent acting and writing. It was great. Columbo was great. Peter Falk was great. The other thing I was mentioning, I just kind of wanted to get to this, was don't usually run this, but we've always run Petula Clark. I got distracted. Can you imagine? I know we're going to lose most of our audience since I lost my place. However, There's a lot of shows on that walk-in music that I'd like to have on there, and I just didn't have. I'd like to have the Wild Wild West should be on there. Well, the Wild Wild West. A couple of others that just kept coming to me, and so I need to redo that. We just today, I've got a number of songs. I've got one long 15-minute walk-in, which I usually use, which is mostly TV shows. And I was a little behind schedule today trying to get something fixed on the website, which I saw a question about the website. I'll get to that in a second. And I was working on that, and so I needed a little extra time, so I decided to kick in Bonanza. Great example, thank you. Yeah, Bonanza, what great themes. I remember one that I was like, this is the one that made me realize I really need to do this. I have to get the Hawaii Five-0 theme on there. That was just crazy, tremendously good. All of F Troop's another one. Yep, that was bum bum ba-da-dum bum ba-da-dum bum 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 ba-da-dum bum bum. I think. Bum bum ba-da-dum bum ba-da-dum bum ba-da-dum 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 bum bum. But Hawaii Five-0 is crazy good opening credits. Yeah, the Ventures. Anyway, so just tonight, because I needed another 4 or 5 minutes, I teed up Time Warp from Rocky Horror Picture Show. Which again, when I experienced Time Warp and watched the Rocky Horror Picture Show a number of times in Gainesville in 1979, 80, I guess, somewhere around there, I remember thinking, this is as young and as hip as anything gets. My square old parents would never, ever, ever, ever get the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Ever. And that's how cool and with it and hip I am. And now I play it, and I think nobody's ever heard of this. This is old boomer stuff. With that said, just listening to Time Warp from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, it just reminded me. I look, I completely understand this, and I'm not going off on this rant about either millennials or Gen Z. And I understand that everybody, it's a well-known psychological phenomenon that when people think about old times, they remember the good times and not the bad times. I get all of this. But just listening to Time Warp from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, I just remember it just seemed like things were just so much. I'm not saying that they were even more fun, although they were more fun. It's just that they were so less stressful, you know? We could go in and watch the Rocky Horror Picture Show and have to worry about, you know, what Frankenfurter's pronouns were. He didn't come down the stairs and immediately demand the audience, you know, had to abide by these rules of the castle. Let's go up to the lab and see what's on the slab. I feel you quiver with anticipation. Say it. Patient. So everybody was just having a really good time, and nobody was like looking for ways to be offended. I guess that's really what it was, you know. I don't think anybody was. Hill Street Blues, another great theme. Apparently Ed Smith has listened to the debate because he says our governor's a slick dude and slick works. Yes, I'm a little concerned about that. I didn't watch it. I have no interest or desire to see it. If the United States decides to elect Gavin Newsom as president of the United States, then everything that's happening in California could happen to the rest of America, and we will just simply buckle down more. Dave Big Booty says Doctor Who is dead to me. Yes, because it went down the woke wagon. But the Doctor Who theme is, I have to say it, I think it's probably the best science fiction theme ever. I was not a Doctor Who fan. I always thought it was a little ridiculous. Your primary enemies are these giant vacuum cleaners. And my God, how are we going to stop the Daleks? Well, we could put in a stair about that tall, maybe. Maybe if we just put in like a stair like that size around the building, you know, just a little stair like that. That'd pretty much keep them out, I think. Yeah. All right, sold. And they've got that thing that looks like a, you know, plumber's helper coming out of them. Not a fan of Doctor Who, but the theme is phenomenal. And they've had so many different versions of the theme, so that's pretty cool too. Anyway, yeah, I was just thinking about that, you know, just how much simpler things used to be and how much just how you could actually be a kid back then and not have to worry about, all of these invented crises that are driving this entire two generations of young people barking mad. It's not their fault. It's just like, we were afraid of 25,000 hydrogen bombs. They're afraid that the CO2 concentration is going to go past 450, which would mean it would be then 460. But that is apparently the end of the earth if you listen to these folks and all the rest of it. I just somehow think, you had to find a way to do this. Is one of the major advantages of the Major Mace Mattingly thing. Is that it'd just be nice if you could just show young people today what it was like to be essentially free to have fun without worrying about all this stuff. Sorry, I just caught this. Matt Strange says, "Hey, you want to feel old, Bill? Just saw a VHS player in a museum." Yeah. Space 1999, all that stuff. I actually was thinking about this. I just kind of had a couple spare minutes, and I was thinking, you know what? It was a really cool opening. Was the theme for the Rat Patrol, and I listened to the theme for the Rat Patrol, and I have no memory of the theme of the Rat Patrol. I must have been thinking of something else. But Wild Wild West, what a crazy great show that was. Anyway, just fooling around. But that following program was brought to you in living color. Really, I don't know. It was fantastic. Or just earlier before the show today, I saw Elon Musk being questioned about advertisers flocking to leave X because of some gigantic manifested social brouhaha. Apparently, the equivalent of Media Matters is writing, these advertisers saying you must leave this horrible, racist, anti-Semitic, or whatever platform. Just fill in the blanks for the day. And he was being interviewed about this. He said, "Well, X is losing a lot of money in revenues. Are you concerned about that?" And he said, "No, I'm glad they go. I hope they go." And you're glad they go. You hope they go. It's an advertised. You live on advertising revenue. He said, "I don't want them on the program. I don't want them on the platform. If they're going to just be like this, I don't want them. I don't need them." "Are you kidding?" He said, "No, let me make this clear to you. F them," he said, and he didn't say F them. He said, "F them. Did you just tell your advertisers just to F off?" "Yes." Did I not make myself clear? Let me say it again. F you. And then he called out Bob Iger by name and Disney. And I just thought, man, there's like Mark Dice had this whole thing about, well, then they may pull his app off of Apple and it might really damage X or Twitter and they may go bankrupt. And it's just like, this is the thing I like about Elon is that the nicest thing about the being the richest guy in the world is you have FU money, and it always comes back to me whenever I think about this. Is there's a tremendous line in Citizen Kane where Kane, Charles Foster Kane is an orphan I think he's an orphan, and when he's very young, he's 4 or 5 years old, he finds out he's inherited this tens of millions of dollars. So he's raised by accountants and bureaucrats and all the rest of it. And there's one guy who's his accountant for life. So Kane starts a newspaper when he's a young man, and it's not being tremendously successful. This is where he's young and he's tremendously idealistic. And his accountant comes in and says, "Mr. Kane, you're got to remember this is in the 30s, so this is a big hunk of money. Your newspaper is losing $1 million a year, sir. You have to shut it down." And he says, "You're right, Mr. Bernstein, I think. You're right, Mr. Bernstein, I think. We are losing $1 million this year. We lost $1 million last year, and I expect we'll lose $1 million next year. At this rate, I'm going to have to shut this newspaper down in 22 years, or whatever the number was." And I just thought, man, that's the level. I'm obviously not interested in money. I think it's pretty clear by now. I'm not interested in pursuing money, but that kind of freedom to be able to just say, hey, I've got that on a small scale, basically. One of the things on the website about membership is, one of the best things about having the members is you can't all fire me at the same time. I'm sure I can do things that could get everybody to fire me eventually, but not all at the same time. So I'm not beholden to what a corporation tells me to say or not say or so on. So I do actually have a little bit of that experience, but The I was just so proud of him, because it is blackmail, and it is it's just the woke left basically making trying to shut down anything that they disapprove of, and he just said, piss off. And everybody, Twitter's losing all this money. It's something like, I actually genuinely think, I think they said that somebody said that, if I remember the number correctly, like Twitter's losing $125 million a year. And I thought to myself, well, he bought it for $40 billion. So what's that? 160 years, maybe, something like that, right? I'm probably off by a significant number there. And just as a quick aside, I was in Best Buy looking to buy some adapters to get the studio up and running now that the site's open. I will come back to the site. And just as I was checking out, there's a little box there just behind the counter, and it just said Starlink, $500. Boom. If you got AC, plug it in. You got the internet anywhere you want to go. I don't have it. I'm tempted. I'm tempted just because I like the idea, frankly. But in any event, we talk about Elon all the time, and like I said, I don't think he's a normal guy. I think all billionaires are not millionaires. Most millionaires I know are tremendously sane, good, hardworking people. They're salt of the earth. Millionaires, billionaires, on the other hand, I think they're all barking mad nuts. I think he's barking mad nuts too, but he's our barking mad nuts, and or at the very least, he's not one of theirs. So, I just, every time the guy opens his mouth, I like him better and better. Okay. Dave Big Booty says, "Will it be faster than the POS internet in your building?" Dave, I take that as a personal insult. So why don't we do this? We are actually streaming, but let's do this. Let's go to the. I don't know why this one particular thing is so good at it. The Ookla. Let's do the Ookla speed test right this second. Speed test by Ookla. I just like it because it looks cool, I guess. All right, ready? Here we go. This is in the middle of a broadcast. We're not downloading everything. We're uploading. Spectrum server, go. Of course, we are more concerned with upload than download. So down. "540 megabytes a second down." That's not too bad. It's the up that gets you killed. Let's see what the up is. It's not awful. 30 up, maybe 30 megabytes a second up. So I don't know if it's the. I really don't think it's me. I think it's either Twitch or something. But in any event, I've always had fairly good internet connection here. Here's an interesting fact. Hey, Michael Baker, he says, "I'm in rural Australia and I use Starlink. It rocks, but it's better for rural, is my understanding." Yeah, mine too. My understanding is that when you're in a fairly densely populated area, there's just an awful lot of signals that are trying to get handed off. And if you're in the middle of nowhere, not that you're in the middle of nowhere, but there are worse places to be than the middle of nowhere. There you go. So the internet here is not too bad. I just like the idea of it. And there's I think it was a Michael Crichton book called Congo, where I didn't particularly like the book, but it was about a lost city, and there were these killer apes that would, anybody get close to them, they'd smash her between two giant rocks or something like that. And they were talking about laser or satellite phones in the jungle. And then Paul Simons wrote a song called "These Are the Days of Miracle and Wonder." What is that song called? But he says, lasers in the jungle somewhere. I just thought there's just something very evocative about that little expression, lasers in the jungle. That's a great album, by the way. Anyway, yeah, so la-di-da, la-di-da. Darth Chuck the Merciless says Elon is the only one racing. Everyone else, including FedGov, are crawling when they could run. Contest for the slowest, because that's how Lockheed and Boeing made the most money. Exactly. I saw the boy in the bubble. Thank you, Marisha. I saw I saw the Chinese apparently recovered a booster. They're the kind of thing that SpaceX was doing 10 years ago. They made their first like vertical landing or something. That's the only thing I've seen them do that actually concerned me, only because they're the first people that seem to have understood that once he did this, it's just a matter of how soon you're going to change your company, or just how long it's going to take for you to go out of business. I'm astonished that Boeing and these guys haven't done. Well, not astonished. They have no incentive to do it. They're going to get a ton of money from the government, and why would they? Why would they be interested in a inexpensive launch vehicle? Chinese are copying Musk and others. They are. And they seem to be copying everybody. That's why I'm not worried about these people. Also, by the way, I saw something not too long ago about their newest carriers. They've got, so there's like the I forget what the numeration is. The number one carrier was like, oh, come on, Bill. Admiral Kunitsov, Soviet jump jet deck. Was built in Ukraine, was just a shell. They basically bought it, turned it into a jump jet carrier. Then their second carrier, I think, might have been something like that. They might have modified that. And then their third carrier was, I think, this is off of memory, I think their third carrier is a flat deck carrier. It's floating. Flat deck carrier with catapults, and I think their fourth one is supposed to be a nuclear powered flat deck carrier with catapults. Well, it turns out they're having problems with the electromagnetic catapults, and they had an awful lot of problems with the electromagnetic catapults on the Ford. And so on some kind of cosmically judicial, cosmic justice front, they apparently copied they copied the Ford plan to use electromagnetic catapults because that made them feel like they're up to date and right nipping at America's heels. But they had a hell of a time making them work on the Ford, and the Chinese can't get they can't get them working. So the thing's in dock, and over the catapult rails, they got three rails. The Ford does two. I think when they went to the electromagnetic, they got rid of the fourth cat. But on the Chinese carrier, I think it's Carrier 3. They've got these boxes that they put over the rails so nobody can see the work that they're doing on them. But see, this is why I don't worry about China, despite the fact that we've got this idiot in the White House and all the rest of it, and all of the woke stuff and all of it. I saw an analysis that said that the launching of that carrier, Xi Jinping was supposed to be there, and he wanted a certain kind of Chinese beverage, but they had already ordered champagne, and because the Chinese beverage that he wanted wasn't there, he decided not to attend. So, what do you do about that? I talked to a guy who was in the Air Force, and I knew pretty well, and I asked him if he was worried about this stuff. Not just the naval aviation, because as far as he's concerned, being in the Air Force, naval aviation doesn't exist, and if it does, it's certainly irrelevant. But I asked him about things like, you're worried about the flankers and all the the felons and all this, and it's just it's vaporware. The Su-57 felon, the so-called fifth generation Russian fighter, is 4.5 generations maybe. And they're saying, "Oh, it's a raptor killer." Well, I'll believe it when it kills some raptors. This is the thing about all of this stuff is like all of these claims of the Japanese, the Russian, try again. The Chinese have the J-20, the Mighty Dragon. That's their stealth fighter. It's big. It's got canards. I'm not impressed. The thing about our stuff is it works because we work it in the field. But I do know that things like talking about the Japanese. Try it again, Bill. The Chinese are the the Russian carriers with their flankers, they're, coming off the jump jets. I said, is this any kind of real threat for us? And he said, no, they can take off from a carrier with either a full fuel load or a full weapons load, but not both. So they can either fly a long way and then drop a harshly worded letter, or they can carry an awful lot of weapons and ordnance 40 miles out. And it becomes like this. It's all just almost like, is that flower warfare? Where I think the Hawaiian tribes called it this, where warfare is essentially just a show. You just go out to the top of the hill and you're all dressed up in your outfits with all your feathers and you're banging things, and it's not actual fighting. It's just designed to intimidate the opponents. I just think we would just destroy them. I watch a lot of a channel called Growling Sidewinder. He does a lot of DCS stuff, and I'm getting a little bit past peak Growling Sidewinder, because it seems to me that whatever aircraft Growling Sidewinder, that's the name of the guy who has the channel, whatever aircraft he's in is going to win. And that's either telling me that the DCS AI is really poor. He's excellent, don't get me wrong, he's really terrific. But that's telling me either the DCS AI the flight simulator AI is really, really bad, or he's selecting his clips, which also doesn't bother me so much. I just wish I knew if that were the case. So for a person who likes to fly DCS as a flight simulator, it's like I look at this guy and he's like, yeah, no problem, dodge this missile, dodge that missile, whatever he's in a MiG-15 against a Raptor, he wins. And I don't know, it's a little suspicious to me. In any event, he'll often take the F-22 out against, all these various enemies and stuff. And then he just did one just a couple days ago and this blew my mind. I have seen in DCS, I've seen 2 Raptors together. That's the most I've ever seen. And when you hear about all these exercises like Red Flag, they'll take 2 Raptors up against 8 F-15s, knock them out of the sky before F-15s before they know what hit them. Then they'll take 16 F-15s against 2 Raptors. He took 10 Raptors. And the sight of 10 Raptors in the sky boggled my mind. And then I realized we've got a couple hundred of them, right? Yes, he has been shot down plenty of times. He's just not shot down as much as I am. And I understand that, so it's probably just sheer jealousy on my part, because he goes out there and says, we'll just dodge this missile here and do this. And I'm like, well, okay, it's time to, let's roll in. We're going to put it in the crank and boom. Next thing I know, watch my wreckage heading to the ground. But heard the new hotness from India killed an F-22. Yeah, they're all F-22 killers, except none of them have actually done it. But I actually think, it's just I'm wandering around here, just kind of warming up. I think that I've given this serious thought, because this is obviously not only something I know something about, something I love. I don't believe that there has ever in the history of aviation been a time when one side's aircraft was so much more dominant than the other side's as the F-22 is, compared to the best that are out there now. Assassin of the Gray says we have around 150 available F-22s. Okay. I watched 10 of them take out 40, and 0 losses on the F-22s. Phil's here watching the show, and I was talking with him the other day about DCS, and the DCS is a flight sim. I'll just get the airplane stuff out of my system, and the rest of you can just go make a sandwich or whatever. But the F-18 Hornet was the first DCS module that has total fidelity. Every single switch on the actual cockpit has an analog on the sim, and it does the same thing. So so it's the F-15C, and that's a 70s era aircraft, late 70s, and so the Hornet with the Charlie model AMRAAM is as good as you can get in DCS without going to mods. So all of a sudden you're finding yourself flying against Su-57 Felons and J-20 Mighty Dragons, and they've got Mach 5 hypersonic missiles with a 120-mile range, and you're going after them in F-18C Hornets with radar from the 1970s, which weren't particularly great radar either back then, and trying to win a modern day fight with a 70s version of our aircraft and 80s or 90s versions of our missiles against stuff that's out there in 2023. And this just made me angry. Because, if you want to do fleet defense mission, it's like they can knock you down from 120 miles and you got to get inside of 30 to have a shot at getting them. And I kept asking about this, and I'd listen to some of the forums there in DCS. And everybody wants they want the Superbug, they want the Super Hornet, which is, there's nothing in the fleet now that flies the Legacy Hornet. It just isn't. There aren't any. Even the Blue Angels went to the Super Hornet not long before I saw him earlier this year. By the way, the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds get the worst jets that are still flyable because you don't need avionics, you don't need weapons systems, you need a good airframe. But they've always gotten basically the bottom. And when the Blues went to the Superbug, the Rhino, the F8 Super Hornet, I don't want to fly historical missions. I like flying in the present. So I would like to be able to fly F-18 E's and F's off of modern carriers with the modern radar that the F-18 has. And I'd also like to have the Delta version of the AMRAAM, which is about 80 miles. It's not quite as good, but it's better. And then we've got the 260s, AM 260s coming online. They're good to 140 miles, and they're Mach 5, Mach 6. And then it's back to where it should be, which is game over. It just bothers me that this is not something that's going to happen in the future. It's the way it is now. And you can't do it in DCS without going to private mods, and those guys don't have a big budget. So I didn't know why. And it turned out, I found out apparently that the F-18 Super, how does this happen? The F-18 Super Hornet, Boeing Super Hornet, is licensed to Microsoft Flight Simulator. And that means that DCS as a company can't put it out. Anybody can make a mod, that's fine. So they've got a great looking skin of an F-18 Super Hornet. It looks like the Super Hornet. It's just got the old radar. It doesn't have the extra weapons pylons. And the guys that made this tremendous mod exterior didn't have a lot of time or money, just 3 guys. I basically told Phil, I said, listen, I want to get in touch with these guys when I have some free time, sometime in 2027, somewhere in there. And I want to ask them, what would it cost you guys to do a really good mod of the Superbug? How much money would it take you guys? There's 3 people in this studio. They're constantly, we're just 3 guys, we don't have time to work on it. Okay, fair enough, I get that. How much money would it cost to do that? Because I think there's a lot of DCS players out there who'd like to be flying something that had some teeth in this current day. Anyway, that's enough of that. Now, real quick about the website. So, 2 days ago, I realized, man, this launch seems to be going really well. I haven't gotten any emails about it. And then I looked later in the day and I realized, in fact, I haven't gotten any emails about anything. So when we moved the site, we have bill at billwhittle.com is actually delivered through Gmail. I'm not exactly sure how that works. But when they put up the new site, these pointers got changed. So I haven't had an email for 2 days. And what's worse, info at billwhittle.com hasn't heard anything in 2 days. So when I found that out, I was like, oh boy. There may be all kinds of problems with the website that we're not hearing about. That made my blood run cold. So I'm going to be staying up late enough tonight to talk to the guy when he wakes up, because he's in Bangladesh, which is plus 14 from here. The DNS is broken. Thank you, Darth. Maybe somebody can help me with that. I think you tried to help me with that. I just don't know how to do it. In any event, I did see a couple of comments on the website. Many of them were, hey, this is really wonderful. But a couple of people said, I sent out an email for the Backstage show. I sent out one previously saying, hey, here's your new website. Here's how you log in. Then I sent out last night's email about the Backstage show, which is members only. You should have been one of the beta testers. I was one of the beta testers. The problem is, we fixed everything we could fix with the beta testers, but the site was on a parallel server and there are problems. There are problems that we can't determine until it's actually at BillWhittle.com. So here, I got a couple comments in the members only section of the news site saying we got the link for the members only thing. We followed the link on the email, and it took us to the main page, and we couldn't get to the members only stuff. And what the hell's the matter with you, kind of thing, you know? I take this stuff so seriously, you have no idea. Because last time we changed the website, it was a catastrophe. Okay, Matt, you got a deal. Thank you. Thank you very much. Matt says he's got a web development company in Australia. Don't go to Bangladesh. That'd make me very happy. In any event, Lady Hawk says it made him log in twice. So here's what I think happened. Members only content, like the backstage show, is essentially a locked door. And when the email went out and you clicked on the link to go to members only content, you couldn't get in unless you'd already been to the website and logged in and clicked the remain logged in box, which I put on the previous email. And I realized, no, I need to put that on every email for the next several weeks, if not several months. What happened was many people said I couldn't get to it. Then they logged in, and then I think they said they had to refresh, and sometimes they had to log in or do it again. In any event, one of the things that we tested hard was, for God's sakes, you know, there's not much I can do about you might have to log in and password again one more time because all the security protocols have changed so much since we did the last one. We tried to carry the cookies over. I don't know if that's worked for anybody or not. But once you're logged in, you should be good. And then what I didn't realize was that when I sent out a members only link, which was the second email that went out to the new site, that people would be bouncing off of the members only thing until they were logged in and maybe out and back in again. Anyway, the thing that we tested to the ground was once you were logged in and you click the remember me box, does it remember you? And the answer seems to be yes. So if you've logged in and you had problems, you logged in and you clicked on the remember me to stay logged in, then we haven't seen any sign of any problems after that. So that's the case. But the problem is I don't have email for 2 days now, and we haven't gotten company email for 2 days now. So there could be an entire avalanche of people very angry, and that's not what I wanted. However, with that said, I think it looks good. Now, there's another problem here with the website, not even so much a problem as the BillWhittle.com logo in the upper left leads to the test website. So this is another thing. All of these links. Thank you very much for that. I will fix all of this tonight as soon as we're done here. Okay, so I saw two comments about this as well, and there may be more. A couple people saw it, saw the website, and they had a hard time navigating to the shows. So I don't know if this is the official term. However, took a few turns flushing his DNS cache before he could get to the new site using BillWhittle.com. Good Lord, a few hours. This is not what I want to hear. This is not what I want to hear. Okay, one thing that is not related to technical problems is just a design issue, and that is that the new website is essentially a scrolling website. This is basically the new style. I answered a couple people who said, well, it's hard to navigate. I said, I like the scrolling website because it looks alive and it's got a lot of cool things, but it's not like you get to a page, click here, click here, click here. You just keep scrolling and you get there. And I threw in a link to Apple.com, which is where this stuff basically, I don't know if it originated with Apple.com, but certainly they're the style trendsetters of the internet. So if you go to Apple.com, you land on the page. and there's not even a hamburger menu. You just keep scrolling down until you get to where you want. So one thing I could do to solve this, I'm not nuts about it aesthetically, but that's secondary. One thing I could do is, when you go to the website now, you get the big full screen photo montage. And then what I could do is I could put underneath the photo montage a series of buttons. There's a pull down menu take you directly to the show page, but I could put a series of buttons there saying, shortcuts. So basically, click here to go to right angle page, click here to go to the Stratosphere Lounge page, and then you wouldn't have to do all of that scrolling. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm not nuts about the way that would look, but that's not important really so much as the rest of the stuff. It is available through the pull down menu. It says shows at the top, and you can just do that. I'm hoping that this is just a familiarity thing, and once people have had a chance to be on it a little bit, they'll be able to realize if they want to go right to right angle, they just land on the home page, pull down shows, right angle, and there you go. The nice thing about the scrolling is it allows me to introduce a bunch of other stuff that people wouldn't see otherwise, like the ephemera section and Major Mace Mattingly stuff and the story mechanics and all the rest of the stuff. I'm very fond of it. I think it looks good. Isn't there the top down at the top for that there? Yes. So maybe it's something just as simple as highlighting the shows in red, or the login here in red, just making them easier to find. But again, I hope that once you get there, it's gonna, okay, just a couple of teething pains, but in any event, I'm very happy with the way it looks, and it certainly is faster. So that alone, I think, is really valuable. Okay, so we have a $25 super chat from Sad Wings Raging saying Taffy 3 funding jar bill. I am. Has anybody seen the trailer for the new movie at Daily Wire? Lady Ballers, I guess. I wasn't, I wasn't just knocked out by it. I saw a couple days of filming when I was there. Sorry, I don't know about that, Lapco. I'm working on things. I've been out of commission for a couple days here. So a lot of people really liked it. Well, that's terrific. I'm curious to know what the rest of the movie looks like. I have a real concern about just dealing with the Taffy 3 thing. I don't want to lose control of this thing. This thing has to be done really, really well and seriously. I don't know. I've seen the teaser trailer for the Pendragon Cycle, and it, I just thought it looked close, but it just didn't look. It didn't sell me on it, and I don't want this thing to be 90% of the way there, and I don't want somebody saying, now you really could do this because for whatever reason. I would much rather raise the money and do it the right way. And thank you, Michael Baker. Now, obviously, I can't do it by myself. Along these same lines, however, and somebody mentioned the Snow White thing and Brett and all the rest of it. I don't know. I certainly don't want to speak ill of people who are paid, allowed me to do a lot of stuff with them. I've not been blown away by the movie content in terms of just, you know. Marisha says, will there be real planes and balloons? The thing about it is, yeah, wow. The guys who did, I did the notes for the final episode of Empire of Terror. I did those last night, so it's basically all in there and should be released. I don't know when Daily Wire is going to release it, but it's going to be done soon. It's a production company down in San Diego. When we did it, we didn't do it in the Daily Wire main building. We had a remote stage. We have an excellent producer from Daily Wire, executive producer, who's handling the nonfiction stuff, and Dave did a tremendous job of it. But basically, Daily Wire hired me and hired them, and we worked off-site to do this Empire of Terror stuff. And I thought that it just looked tremendous. And these guys that I worked with on this last one, I was not happy with the way the Cold War looked, but these guys that I worked with on the Empire of Terror, they're tremendous. And I would like to, talk to them or somebody else about it. You're going to need some real production things. So in terms of how you would do it, a lot of that would depend on the budget. The worst case scenario would be to do it with CG actors, where I would use Unreal Engine to create the characters, and then I would do deep fakes over them. I could get them looking pretty realistic, but really, the way it really needs to be done is with live actors and practical sets. And you don't need a lot of practical sets. You need the bridge of the Johnson, which also serves as the bridge of the hull, and the hull is one of the ships. And I forgot the name of the one. Plus, you need a slightly different bridge for the Samuel B. Roberts, and you probably need a bridge of I don't know, was it Gambier Bay that was where they had the flag was for Taffy 3. So you don't need to show this from the Japanese side. Now, obviously, the rest of it has to be CG, but for instance, here's where I do not want to go. There was a movie that released a couple of years ago, and I thought, man, great, it's one of my favorite topics of all time. And not only did I not go see it in the theater, I had no desire to see it when it was released. In fact, I never did see any of it other than there are Q&A on the test site and the main site, two different sets of questions. I only just discovered this a few minutes ago. Okay, so I'm probably going to go to the main site. In any event, and that was Midway. So, Battle Midway. Heerman, thank you very much for that, Todd. It was bothering me that I couldn't remember. Heerman, Hull, Johnson, and Samuel B. Roberts, plus two other destroyer escorts. One of them was the Butler, I think. Butler class escorts. I think Butler was actually one of them. Anyway, so you need to do the whole thing with CG. That's the bad news. The good news is that for hard surface stuff, metal surfaces, the CG now is getting to the point, and I mean accessible CG, is getting to the point where it is indistinguishable from real world. Did you note this website bug? You don't see it. Oh, yeah. There's About Us, the Contact Us. I'm still working on some of these things, so I'm working on it. I'm getting there. Let me just continue with this real quick. So, so the CG can be very, very good. I would want a practical set. The CG is good enough so that anything that's taken, like, say you have a position where the destroyer goes past you in the water, you could put CG characters on that CG destroyer and not be able to tell the difference now. But in terms of actual close-ups, I think it absolutely has to be live action. So that you would need to cast Ziggy Sprague and his admirals, deck on the, I think it was the Gambier Bay, was the lead of the 6 Jeep carriers. You'd need a bridge for the Johnston. You'd need a bridge for the Roberts. You need to cast. Ernest Evans would be the big one, and Bob Hagan, and this all used to be fresh in my mind. The commander of the Samuel B. Roberts, and you'd also need things like you need like the practical of the inside of one of the 5-inch gun turrets, and even that's convenient because all of the turrets on all of the vessels on Taffy 3, they're all 5-inch guns. Even the open ones on the back of the carriers, they had little stingers on the back of the carriers. They were 5-inch guns, so you could. That's not a tough thing to build. A 5-inch gun turret interior is easy because it's small and tight and stuff. You just have to get it right. So the good news about Taffy 3 is you don't need a lot of variety of locations because everything happened in 2.5, 3 hours in one place. The Frank Luke story I'm working on is, I mean, it's everywhere. I mean, you got Frank Luke on the Western Front in World War II. Plus, you got to have him flight training in North Island. You have to show him growing up in Phoenix, Arizona. You got him on camping. You got him doing all kinds of other things. This thing, you really just need that. Thank you very much. Shonef says, this is for your I don't give enough attitude. I admire you never back down from the woke ideological tyrants. Thank you very much. But Taffy 3, if I got an offer to do Taffy 3 from Daily Wire, I think I'd turn it down. That's the honest truth. Because it's just got to be correct. Are there any floating examples? Steve Whoop says. As it turns out, there are. There are at least 2 or 3 Fletcher class destroyers that are still out there, and they used that class in Tom Hanks's Greyhound movie, which to me was more like didn't feel like a movie. I liked it. I mean, it was fun. It's the same exact class of destroyers, just in the Atlantic. But it just didn't feel like a movie. Anyway, so they got to film on one of the museum ships, and they had to hang these huge blue screen things behind there, and I don't know if that's going to be necessary. If you look at like it's a good example to look at. If you look at Greyhound, you realize you've got a practical bridge set. You've got the wings off on the side of the bridge, and then you can blue screen just the wings. You don't have to get the actual size ship. What you do have to do is you have to get everything absolutely right. The bridge on the Fletchers is just it's enough room for 4 people to stand side by side. It's not this gigantic thing. Plotting room is directly behind there. That has to look exactly right. You probably have to build, I think, the interior of the gun director, which again is a tiny little room. And I would, if I were to tell, and I'm going to tell this story, I wouldn't start right on the battle. I would pick it up with the commissioning of the Johnston. I'd actually, cold open would be the Battle of the Java Sea, where, I don't know, what are we, a week into the war, maybe 4 or 5 days in the war, and the ABCD forces, America, British, Australian, and Dutch, something like that. Combined fleet goes out to stop this relatively minor Japanese invasion force in the Battle of the Java Sea, and we lose 3 cruisers and something else, and the rest of the guys run for their lives, and the Japanese, I don't think, lost a single destroyer. And Ernest Evans was on one of those ships that ran away. That's what I would start with, because that would show you the dominance of the Japanese. I'd start with that scene there, and I'd have a slightly younger Ernest Evans basically just looking in disgust as he's running for his lives, watching all these other Allied ships going to the bottom. And that's important to know that about Ernest Evans. the commissioning of the Johnson was interesting. If for no other reason than Ernest Evans comes out there and basically says, I mean to take this ship into harm's way. I've run from the enemy once. I'm never going to do that again. You really need to know that in advance. And the training that they did on the way out, Evans and Bob Hagan as gunnery officer, there's a scene that needs to be there, little mini scenario. I've forgotten now what it was. I suspect it was Saipan. I'm not 100% sure, but the Johnston was given shore bombardment duties to support one of the Marine invasions, and the Marines loved the destroyers because they were so shallow draft they could run these things 20, 30 yards off the beach, and so these destroyers were getting close and support the Marines by knocking out hardened Japanese positions, but the Johnston was just 4 or 5 times closer than anybody else dared go. I think Ernest Evans, I don't know if he had a Marine background or wanted to be a Marine or something, but he really, really, really got it on a way the other guys didn't. And so these destroyers would come in and they make their passes and stuff, and they'd fire on these positions. Johnson went in to the point where you could throw. They were taking pistol fire off the hull from the Japanese, pistol fire bouncing off the hull. That's how close he got. And he got in so close, and he would just shoot. He'd fire all his ammunition. Usually have a Marine spotter on board. He'd fire all his ammunition, go back out to his holding station, and that was all the ammunition they were allotted. And he would basically get in his little launchers and head over to on his little launch and head over to the admiral ship or head over to the resupply ship and said, "I need more 5-inch ammunition." "Well, we've already used up your allotment." "Yeah, but those guys still need some help. I want to go back in there." So he did, and he was in there so close. The Marines just loved him, loved the Johnson. And the one particular scene I really want to get is, so for those who are not familiar with how it works, the Fletcher class destroyer has 5 5-inch turrets. The destroyer escort has 2 5-inch turrets, and each one of the turrets is capable of firing independently, but that's not the smart way to do it. Right at the very, very top of the masts of any kind of a gunship is where the gunnery officer is, and usually has this very, very wide spotter thing. It's kind of like having binoculars super wide that allows you to triangulate the distance. And so the gunnery officer is up in the gun director's platform, forward gun director's platform, and all of the 5 turrets are slave to his inputs. It's very early kind of analog computers, but actually work really pretty well. And when they were supporting this shore action, Bob Hagan was up there in the gun director's platform on board the Johnson, and he was looking through his binoculars. This is a true story. Looking through his binoculars, and he saw a Japanese officer get up from behind this position and start waving his katana, his sword. And it was clear to Hagen that he was getting ready to launch one of these suicide charges. You could see some guys behind him starting to gather. So this guy was getting his guys all ginned up, ready to go, so they'd go over the top, go screaming into the Marines, and usually they get cut down, but sometimes they'd overrun them. In any event, Hagen didn't want to take that chance. So they were essentially at point blank range, and Hagen lined up this Japanese officer, and then he pulled the firing trigger, and he didn't put 1 5-inch turret on this guy. He put 5 of them on this guy, and they all fired at once, and he didn't even turn to pink mist. He just disappeared, and that was the end of that charge. And Evans saw this, the captain saw this, and he got on the speaker and said, "Excellent shooting, Mr. Hagen. However, I think you need to be a little more careful with conserving ammunition in the future." That's the kind of guys they were. The guys, I don't want to look it up, and it bothers me that I don't have it to mind. I guess it's just because I have to upload so much data and write them to a page file and load new data and all the rest of it. The captain of the Samuel B. Roberts was, can somebody tell me what his name was? want to say it was Robert as well, but somebody give me that if I have a second. So this guy's kind of interesting too. He is the one who had part of the speech. Hang on a second. Just waiting for the hive mind to get back to me. Who was the skipper of the Samuel B. Roberts in that engagement? Looking, searching, waiting. 10,000 people now. 10,000 at least are marching to their Google windows here. Hello. I'm going to have to do it myself if I don't get it soon. Nobody tell them, you guys are cruel and heartless swine. All right, let's figure out who it was. It was... you're going to have to wait now. Copeland. Bob Copeland. So I want to follow the Evans as it's been commissioned and the Copeland. The Johnston was commissioned one day to the day or within 1 day of when it sank. It was afloat for 364 days or 366 days, something like that. So at the commissioning, Evans, captain of the Johnson, said, "We're going into harm's way, and anybody who doesn't want to go into harm's way, get out of here. I've run from the enemy once. I'm never going to run from them again, ever." Copeland seems to have been a little bit more of a laid-back kind of guy. The interesting story about Copeland on the commissioning is just before they set out on their escort mission that ended in the Taffy 3 battle off of Samar. This made it. They had a little newsletter on board the Samuel B. Roberts. This was not uncommon. A little printing press just for the crew. And prior to shoving off, Copeland had a wife of a dignitary, somebody like that, come over to the Roberts. And destroyers are small compared to the big, cruisers or battleships. But the destroyer escorts are half a destroyer. They look like fishing boats practically. So some woman, some VIP woman, went to visit the Samuel B. Roberts, saw how small it was, came aboard, talked to Captain Copeland, and she just looked around at how small and how fragile this thing is, and she said, "Well, Captain, how often does a ship this small sink?" And he said, "Well, ma'am, usually just the once." And I just thought that was epic. And so that's got to be in there. And they both trained real hard on the way out there. And then these guys are sitting there the night before Taffy 3, just a couple hours before the Battle of Taffy 3. They're all listening on the ship-to-ship radios because there's a gigantic engagement with American battleships down in Suriago Strait. And they're just blowing the Japanese battleships out of the water, and these guys are all cheering, and it's, "Oh, man, we got this thing aced. Nothing to worry about. Everything's great. We got Bill Halsey and his carriers are protecting us to the north. The battle wagons down south had just blown the Japanese southern flush out of the water, so we're sitting here pretty." And they wake up the next day, and they start seeing these colored flashes in the water. The individual ships would have their own colored dye that would be attached to the shells, so that if you saw green splashes, you knew that this ship was doing the firing, so they could make corrections accordingly. Yeah, and Michael Baker says the outcome is doubtful. Basically, what it was Copeland. I thought originally it was Evans who said this. So Copeland they're in formation. This massive Japanese force is coming over the horizon, and the Japanese force is much faster than they are. And you've got these little destroyers and these paper-thin escort carriers, which are nothing like fleet carriers. They're running for their lives. the Yamato and all of these battleships and cruisers are coming at them, 10 knot advantage over them, getting closer and closer. Just water just splashing with the blues and the greens, the oranges and stuff, and Evans just says, they're running. He realizes you can't outrun them, so Evans just said hard left rudder, and around the Johnson goes, and then Hoke goes and Howell starts going back, but Johnson was well ahead of those other guys. He's taking his destroyer, his tin can, to fight off the most powerful surface force in the war. He just figured, well, if we're going to get sunk, we might as well get sunk slowing them down. So that's why Taffy 3 is Taffy 3. So Evans turns the Johnson around, makes a run for Taffy 3 for the Japanese center force. And then Copeland is cruising along in his little half a destroyer, sees the Johnson go, and he sees the Hull go, or the Heermann, I forget which was next. But basically the 3 destroyers peel off. Now it's just the 3 destroyer escorts escorting these 6 slow, thin escort carriers, and the other 2 destroyer escorts are on the far side of the formation, but Copeland's on the near side, and he just says, well, I'm not just going to sit here by myself. So he turns around too, and his destroyer escort, I want to say, I think the Fletchers could do 33 knots, and I think the destroyer escorts like the Sammy B could do 24, something like that. So Copeland says, he gets on the horn, and he says, I don't know if it's got it all here on this. I'm not going to waste a lot of time. Anyway, they call the Samuel B. Roberts the destroyer escort that fought like a battleship. He basically gets on the inner ship, the 1MC, and basically says, a large enemy surface group has been detected firing upon our escorts. We're turning to engage them. Survival is not to be expected. Man your battle stations. All right, then. So he goes racing after his big brothers, and the 3 destroyers are outrunning him significantly, 4, 5, 6 knots on him, at least that. And he's just trailing behind like a kid brother. Copeland calls his engineering chief engineer on board the Roberts and tells him to disconnect the safety valves on the boilers. If you put too much pressure on a boiler, it'll explode. So they have these safety valves. And he's basically just said, bolt them down. We're going to need. I'm going to need you to hook on every knot of power we possibly can get. So I forget what the actual numbers were, but I think the top speed of the Sammy B was supposed to be 24 knots, and they got 29 knots out of her. The boilers were operating at double their rated pressure, just waiting to explode. We don't have time to dick around here. He just goes after him, and they win. They win. Copeland was the last guy to see Ernest Evans alive when the Johnson had been just reduced to flaming wreckage on the water. Evans had taken a hit in the bridge, had blown his shirt off, knocked a couple of his fingers off his hand. He wrapped it up in a T-shirt, and he had to steer the ship from the stern because they lost the hydraulic steering. And so he's back at the fantail of the ship, and down just directly below the fantail there's a giant wheel. It's a mechanical wheel, and you could turn the rudders that way, but you couldn't turn them hydraulically. So you would have to take 2 or 3 strongest men you had, and if they worked really hard, they could just barely turn this rudder, and they could only do it for about 6 or 7 minutes before they were completely exhausted. So he just got a bunch of sailors back there, and they just rotated him out, and he's giving steering orders for this destroyer that's lost half of its propulsion. It's lost 2 of its boilers, and 1 of its screws isn't working. The only defense a destroyer has is its speed, because it's the armor on the sides of the ship are as thin as the armor on the deck. It's not armored. It's just boom. And Evans is back there conning his ship and doing all these maneuvers and running in and out of rain clouds and trying to set up attack runs, and he's just screaming down to these guys, all right, all the way to the left, all the way to the left. So finally the Johnson gets sunk, and the Japanese are taking everything out on them because it's just wreckage, and they just kept firing into it. And the Sammy B wasn't in much better shape, but Copeland was sailing past the the Johnson, which had taken a horrible beating, and Copeland said we passed him a couple hundred yards away or less or something. He said last time I saw Captain Evans on the Johnson was he was standing on the fantail of the ship. Ship was going down, and as we passed, he just turned to me and just waved as if it was just a nice day back at Pearl Harbor. Just like, hey, how's it going? And Johnson went down, and Ernest Evans was never seen again. Well, he needs to be seen again, so I'm going to make sure he gets seen again. And 100% full-blooded American Indian, by the way. Didn't seem to have any problem with, not the kind of guy who would have problems with the Cleveland Indians, let's put it that way. Todd Lehman said something earlier called Chasing the Splash, and I know I tell this story every few months. I don't care. I just love it so much. Sad Wings Raging said one turret on the Yamato weighed more than all 5 of those ships, the escorts. Just the turret on the biggest of the battleships. What was it? The Sammy B had 2 turrets, 2 5-inch turrets. They were 5-inch turrets, so the one at the front was turret 5.1, and the one in the rear was turret 5.2. And on the Fletcher classes, it'd be 51, 52, 53, amidships 54, 55 aft. And Copeland, after the battle, Copeland survived, said that he'd never ever seen a gun, a 5-inch gun cycle faster. He said he'd only seen the only time he'd ever seen a gun cycle faster than turret 51 on the Samuel Roberts was in turret 52 on the Samuel Roberts, which was commanded by a guy who I think I did see his picture here. Yeah, this guy needs to be seen too. Gunner's Mate 3rd Class Paul Carr, all-American looking kid. He was probably 19 or 20 years old. He was essentially commanding the aft turret in case if the gunnery platform was out of commission, you could fire the turrets individually, and that happened early. So each one of these turrets had 300 rounds of ammunition of various kinds. Star shells for nighttime, anti-personnel, shrapnel, armor-piercing, high-explosive, all of this stuff. And Copeland took the Roberts in underneath the guns of one of these Japanese cruisers, heavy cruiser. They couldn't depress their guns low enough, so he's just sitting right next to the thing. He's just firing rounds into the superstructure, and these guys are handing rounds up to these guys in these turrets, and they're not even checking it. They would put, they'd fire star shells, then they'd fire high explosive. They weren't looking, they weren't caring what. They're just setting them up and firing them. So this guy Carr, prior to the battle, Copeland said Carr took such pride in that gun. He said you could easily eat off the floor of that turret. It was spotless, absolutely immaculate. And Carr was working that turret, and had a firing rate that apparently has never been equaled, because he, not only him, but he trained his turret crew so tightly. Just a normal looking, kind of goofy looking American boy is what he was as a boy. He was just a kid. And so the Roberts is getting hit, and they're running through this ammunition, just pounding the daylights out of these. They couldn't. The 5-inch shells just bounce off the armor of these Japanese cruisers or battleships, but they wouldn't bounce off the superstructure. So he was causing significant damage. You put a couple rounds into the bridge of that thing, you get somebody's attention. Just before they ran out of rounds, 4 or 5 rounds before they ran out of rounds, the Sammy B lost electrical power. They could still turn the turrets manually, so Carr is up there still shooting at these Japanese ships. But when the electrical power went out, what went out with it was the fans. There were electric fans that would blow the hot gases out of the breech of the 5-inch gun. And when the electrical power went out, those fans went out. And so Carr kept loading, Carr and his turret crew, 4 or 5 guys up there, kept loading that gun and kept firing it. And with the fans gone, he put the second to last round into the breech, closed the breech, and by then the the back of the cannon had gotten so hot that the round exploded inside the gun and killed everybody in the turret. One of the guys who went to see if there were any survivors got in there, and this kid, Paul Carr. Nobody knows who Paul Carr is. Everybody knows who Kim Kardashian is. This is something wrong. We got to fix this. Carr, the rescue guys got to the turret. It's all smoking, obviously, and a lot of guys are just turned to pulp. Carr is standing there, and he's got a wound from the top of his clavicle all the way down to his groin. He just opened up like a fish that had been filleted. And he's standing, and he's holding in his arms, he's holding the last 5-inch shell. 300 rounds, and he's holding round number 300. It's the last shell they have, and he's begging the guys who are rescuing him to help him load the gun. The gun's blown to pieces. He's suffering from shock, but he's standing there, and he's begging them to help him load this gun. So they kind of carry him out of there. They take another couple guys out. One guy had his leg blown off or something, and by the time they come back out, he's lying on the deck and he's gone. He probably died within 60 seconds or so. But for that, he was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. Was it the Medal of Honor, or was it the... Silver Star. It was a Silver Star. Okay. He had a guided missile frigate named after him, of USS Carr FFG 52. The Sad Wings Raising, who obviously has been giving super chats for this project, cares about it as much as I do, just wrote, odds, what are those? The odds were, there were no, he knows this, I'm not saying he doesn't. This is the thing about the Battle of Taffy 3. There were no odds. The chance of survival was 0 as far as everybody was concerned. They all knew it. When they turned around, they knew that there were no, what are the chances of getting out of this? There are no chances of getting out of this. That's why Copeland said survival is not to be expected, man your battle stations. That's what, see, people sometimes think that it's sometimes people think that it's stories like that make the culture great. In other words, that it's events like this that reflect down onto the culture. But what's really true is it's the culture that produces men like that. It's the culture that produces people like Paul Carr and Ernest Evans. They're a product of the culture, and it's a feedback loop. Because if you're in the Navy and you don't know the story of Taffy 3, I'm sure in today's Navy, just hundreds of thousands of people don't know the story of Taffy 3. I'm sure they know the story of Admiral Levine, but they don't know the story about Taffy 3. But the point is, it's a feedback loop. You have a culture that's, we're descended from heroes, and so we try to act heroically ourselves, and we do most of the time. And so you don't want to let guys like Ernest Evans or Bob Copeland or Carr or Copeland down. You know, this is in the highest traditions of the United States Navy. That's what that means. And the thing I really would like to capture in this, Phyllis says that the Johnson was hit by at least 1 to 3 of the Yamato's 18-inch shells. So the Yamato is a super battleship that the Japanese made. They made 2 of them, Yamato and Musashi. They made a third one that was converted to an aircraft carrier, which was sunk by a U.S. submarine. It was the largest vessel ever sunk by a submarine ever in the history of warfare. So Musashi was destroyed the day before by American air power off of Halsey's real carriers, the fleet carriers. The escort carriers were essentially just transports. They were doing ground support roles. They weren't designed to kill ships. They didn't have torpedoes or armor-piercing bombs. They were just jeep carriers. They were transports, basically, for airplanes. And so the Yamato was built in secret with Musashi. It consumed so much of the Japanese budget and manpower and steel. They could not find enough camouflage netting to cover them both. They had to take netting from local fishermen and put them out of business for 6 months just to cover the size of these monstrous super battleships. Shinano, thank you, was the one. Archerfish sank it. And so the Japanese had invested all of their resources into these two super battleships. This is the danger of gigantism. This is why it's always seems like dictatorships love the biggest weapons. Hitler wants the biggest gun, and it's like, so congratulations, you got the two biggest battleships in the world. And this was the Japanese, their single great failure was that they just kept thinking that there would be the decisive battle, that everything would align itself just perfectly, and that finally the moment would come when the Americans would sail into this carefully laid trap, and the Japanese would, in order for this thing to happen, they'd have 5 different fleets that all had to arrive in perfect timing, perfect unison. It's just completely unrealistic. It's like a movie. And so what happened was they've got these 2 giant battleships, Yamato and Musashi, and they don't ever deploy them until it's too late, because they didn't want to lose them. It's like you've got your entire naval budget for a decade practically is tied up in these 2 battleships, but they're so powerful and there's so much prestige attached to them that you don't want to risk losing them. So they might as well be at the bottom. By the time Leyte Gulf happens, the Battle of Leyte Gulf, it's already over. So they send them on a one-way mission, and they sink the Musashi, and they turn around and they turn around again, and that's how Taffy 3 happened. But these 2 wrecks, the Johnson was found about 2 years ago, and it was the deepest shipwreck ever discovered until 8 or 9 months later when they found the Roberts, which is even deeper. I want to say it's 30,000 feet. Not quite. Wreck of the Samuel B. Roberts is at a depth of 22,621 feet. It's not only the deepest known warship, it's the deepest known shipwreck. So that's almost 3 times the Titanic, at least twice the Titanic. And they've got pictures of the Wikipedia page. There it is. And it's really important to see there's the number 1 turret, or the number 2 turret. You need to see these photos, because if you don't see the photos, it's like it never happened. It's like, oh, it's a story. It's like a movie. Hang on. There you go. That's real. That's I'll do that for Twitch as well. That's the some of the mid deck of the Samuel pilot house is what it is, of the Samuel B. Roberts. That's real. People stood there. People stood to those guns. Men stood to those guns, and we know what their names are. And of course, the horror doesn't end there, because after the Battle of Samar is over, the Johnson is sunk, the Hull is sunk, the Roberts is sunk. The Heermann, by some miracle, escapes nearly without a scratch. So you got all these American guys in the water. The Japanese have run away. Phyllis Knudsen has got some interesting things. Sammy B still had live depth charges on her fantail, scared the fudge out of the submersible crew. Did worse than that, I'm afraid, Phyllis. So these guys are in the water, and it turns out the Japanese ran away, so we technically own the battlefield. And some of these aircraft from the escort carriers are looking for survivors, and they mark the position. And this one guy marked this position of where he saw a bunch of survivors from the Johnson and the Roberts, and he radioed it back in. So they would send destroyers back to search for the survivors who were in the water. They saw their fleet sailing away. They knew they won, so, what's it going to be, a couple hours in the water maybe? So the pilot radios in the position, and he transcribes 2 digits. He transcribes instead of writing 47, he writes 74 or something like that. And so they're searching 200 miles away from where these guys are. And they're in the water for almost 3 days. And they get the same kind of shark situation, not quite as bad as the Indianapolis, but I don't know how you measure bad if you're one of those guys that gets pulled under by these things. And the thing that really, really messed with me a lot was that a lot of these guys were just hallucinating. That some of them said they could see an island out there, and that they could see there was a dinner party going on. They could see men in tuxedos and women in evening gowns, and they were just going to swim over there and let them know, and and they'd come back and rescue them. And the thing that just really made my blood chill was one of the chiefs, I guess, on the Johnson, I think it was. He kept trying to slip out of his life belt because they were practically dying of thirst. They've just been in combat for hours, and next thing you know, they're in the water, in the seawater, and they're just so crazy thirsty. And this chief was delirious, and he kept saying, "Skipper, I can see it." He would look down in the water. He said he could see the Johnson just 10 feet below his shoes. And he said, "Look, Skipper, it's right there. Don't you see it? It's right there. I'm just going to dive down. I'm going to go into the locker, going to get some water, come right back up again." So they kept trying to restrain him, and finally the other 3 guys got so tired that they just fell asleep. And when they woke up, he was gone. He went down to get some water for his buddies from the ship. He could see just a few feet below the surface. This kind of thing. This is real. This really happened. It really happened. One of the things that killed a lot of guys in the water. It wasn't just in this particular battle, but it was one of the things that happened in this water. So when the ship is going down, a destroyer and the destroyer escorts carry depth charges for submarines. And when the ship is going down, one of the commands that they give is to go and make safe all the depth charges. And they didn't do that for understandable reasons. So what happens is you have guys in the water, and then the ship sinks. And when it gets to depth, let's say 200 feet or whatever they're set for, if they haven't been safed, then those depth charges will explode underneath the guys. And the concussion from the water just pulps their organs, just kills them instantly. And a number of guys were killed by their own depth charges going off. And not to put too graphic a point on this, but the guys who had some experience with this, they said if you have any doubt, some of these guys were screaming at each other to swim with their butts out of the water. Just keep their heads and their butts out of the water, because that pressure wave would essentially give you a 300 psi enema, and that would be that'd be the end of that. So, yeah, just what do you say about all this stuff? It's just hard to believe it actually happened, and but it did, and I mean to tell that story, and I don't want to be compromised in the ability to tell it the way it needs to be told by people who not only but who do have, in fact, the very best intentions, but are going to start making compromises on things. And no, I just rather crowdsource the thing and just do it that way. Plus, if it's done by Daily Wire or anybody else for that reason, then it's going to go behind the paywall, and I don't want this thing behind the paywall. I want this thing as wide as possible. Like every single person ever in the Navy or in the Armed Forces, for that matter, to share this with everybody else. I want it available to the public for free, and I want it to get seen by millions of people. Is it DKS? Sorry, he says in Jaws movie, the Indianapolis story is a great scene. It is. That's how one of the first things got me interested in naval history. Robert Shaw's character Quint in Jaws. Boy, this guy really hates sharks, huh? Yeah, he sure does. He seems to be completely obsessed with sharks. And then they're sitting out there at sea, and they're all getting drunk, and they're showing off their scars and trying to top each other. And Quint says he got this on board the Indianapolis, and that's enough to shut Hooper up, because Hooper knows what's going on, and Brody doesn't know what's going on. And Robert Shaw does this, one of the best monologues in film history ever. It's a 4-minute story about USS Indianapolis. They delivered the components for the atomic bomb. So it was a super, super top secret mission. Dropped off the bomb at Tinian, was heading back to the Philippines, I want to say. And since it was such a top secret mission, they were under radio silence, got torpedoed on the way back, and nobody knew they were missing for 5 or 6 days. And 800 guys went into the water, and 200 came out, and sharks got the rest of them. And this is the magic of storytelling. This is the magic of not just Jaws, but just in general. You've got a really good actor and some great writing, and instead of seeing this happen, you hear it from a guy who was there, and it's like you were there. See, Shaw did such an amazing job of it. It's just time in the theater just comes to a stop, and everybody just leans forward, and oh, it's a question. Does the military issue film grants? I don't know. I don't really want to deal with that. I mean, I will if I have to, but in any event. So Robert Shaw's he's there. He's in the water. He's telling you what he saw, and Hooper and Brody are just transfixed, and you can just tell that Quint is he's just reliving it. Deleting my video suggestions. Somebody's deleting your video suggestions? Sidewings? I don't know what that's all about. Wow. Earlier he said if there is a God, then those men are on that island at that dinner party, and they are. So anyway, there's all these stories to tell, and you know, somebody needs to do it. By the way, there's a famous story about this with Shaw. He did this scene. It's his central scene. It's Quint's moment. And Shaw had a major drinking problem his entire life. He did the scene pretty much drunk. And by this point in the movie, Spielberg knew that's probably the best we're going to get out of him. Shaw woke up the next day and realized he'd screwed the pooch on this. And basically went out to Spielberg and begged him to do it again. Said, please, it's really important. I know I wasn't prepared, and I know I wasn't ready. I know I made a mess out of it. But please, because you're on a tight schedule. You can't really go backwards on a movie like that. And he said, please, give me one more chance to do it. I'll get it in one, I promise. So they did, and I think they did 2 takes the second time, but almost all of it's the first take. He acquitted himself manfully on that, because that's one of the most remarkable 5 minutes in film. Okay, so let me do a couple quick questions here and see what we can get here. Now, I'm told that there's a couple different the test site and stuff and the links, and obviously I need to get all this stuff straightened out, and I'm doing this as fast as I can. We'll hopefully get these done as fast as we can, but we put as much effort as we possibly could into getting all of them before we rolled on this. So let's see what we got. I'm on the BillWhittle.com site now. Login. I sure do like that image carousel, though. I think that's really cool. All right, so Ian Nolan has set something up already. Eric Blake has already got the thing set up for 12/4, which will be the next Stratosphere Studio. Thank you very much. Kaladin's singing. We got some of the lyrics of the Wellerman. I love that song. I just love it, and it takes me back to that time, because there was a period there when that was all there was, and I love the Wellerman. Okay, so let's see. Ian Roland, Roadrunner, Michael Baker, Eric Blake. We'll do one of Eric Blake's, so I think we'll get through all of these. So here we go. Ian Nolan, thank you again, Ian, for doing this. I figured out a different answer to the question about market information and fiat in 5th generation warfare that I asked a few weeks ago. And the answer staring us in the face is that rather than just zeroing out the debt, the play they'll make is CBDCs, where they can totally control the market. I'm not exactly sure what that is. It's some kind of financial instrument, I guess. I think Ian's watching here somewhere. Can you tell me what a CBDC is? This over here so we don't miss it. Yeah, the longest Johns, they're great. Central bank digital currency. Okay, so basically what they'll do is they'll move it into, they'll move the debt into some place where we can't get to it, essentially. I don't know a whole lot about that, but basically what they'll say is, yes, we've spent trillions, we've spent 40 trillion dollars of your taxpayer money, and don't you worry about it. We got it all taken care of. Don't worry, it's already taken care of. Okay, all right. And he continues. He says, anyway, on to more cheerful topics. It seems that Argentina and Netherlands elections are showing things are finally turning a corner when elections are secure. With election integrity failures of 2020 starting to finally come out, do you think we'll finally have secure enough elections in 2024 to count? We've talked about this many times, and I don't know the answer to this, Ian. My solace is in two of the variables. One of the variables is we don't have to worry about election integrity in the red states, nor do we have to worry about them in some of the swing states. So the question is, on one hand, if you assume that there's unbeatable tampering, that unbeatable tampering will be confined to a certain number of states. And so one of the issues is, if you just want to play this all the way to the margins to make the argument clearer, if there's extensive voter fraud in the blue states to the degree where it's impossible to win in those blue states, are there enough electoral votes in the red states, or including some of the swing states, that are not corrupted to win despite the cheating? That's one. The second one is, I'm told that there are margins of victory that cannot be cheated out of. Now, what we saw in 2020 was that the margin of victory didn't matter, that the algorithms were adjusting. The further ahead Trump was, the more votes they moved towards Biden, and then the closer it got, they'd start backing it off. So they didn't end up winning by, 70 million votes in a state with, 1.5 million voters. They just made it enough so that it was uncontestable, but not enough so that it was unbelievable. That's basically it. When you have election results where the votes are greater than the total number of registered voters, you would think that would be about as compelling evidence as you possibly could provide. In other words, there's some kind of cheating here because there's 150,000 registered voters in this district, and 240,000 of them voted. So that's one thing. The other argument, like I said, is we know some states will have integrity. The third argument is this didn't do us an awful lot of good in the 2022 elections, but look, there's no question that Arizona was reversed in 2022 with Kerry Lake. No question about it. It took them 2 weeks to come up with a certified number for one state in an off-year election. That's how long it took them to get the numbers they needed and to erase whatever credible trail there was. Nobody believes that didn't happen. But one thing I do think has bearing on this is only that we will not be caught by surprise next time. I don't know how that would have affected the Arizona elections, but I think, look, I remember on the election day 2022, I was Daily Wire for that, and in the morning, about 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock, somebody said they're already reporting that voting machines in Arizona are either being taken offline or, was it Maricopa County where it looks like, they just have this huge flood of votes, and And some guy comes out and says, "All right, don't panic. We have two counting machines. One of them is working at, or four. Two of them aren't working. One of them's working at 60% accuracy." They actually said this. And the other one's doing something or other. I said, "Oh, good, 60% accuracy. That's just grand, isn't it?" How does a counting machine work at 60% accuracy? I can see a counting machine either working or not working, but at 60% accuracy, this sounds like a software issue to me. Because if you've got something that's going to deal with paper vote ballots with chads in it, and it's just checking sprockets essentially, that thing's either working or it's not. And so by the time it got to be noon on the election day 2022, I was feeling sick. And it happened again right in front of our eyes, and we all knew it. It took 2 weeks for Arizona to certify their things. Scariest thing I ever saw, even scarier than 2020, was there was a guy who was in charge of certifying the votes. He's an elected official for some small county in Arizona. And he said, "I will not certify this county's votes because I'm not convinced that Maricopa County is accurately counting their votes. And so, since the outcome of this election is dependent on all of these counties being certified, I'm not going to certify my county, even though I know our count is correct. I'm not going to certify our county until I'm satisfied that Maricopa County is counting their votes correctly." And then that's what he said. And then a day later or two, he said, "I am certifying these votes under protest. I'm a married man. I have a family." This is what he's saying. And I am certifying these votes under protest. So somebody with the power threatened him to basically, I didn't make this story up, it's not like I just heard this. I saw the guy speaking about it. And if there was a press corps, then, you would do it. He said it under duress. That's right. He said under duress. Yeah. Threatened to arrest him, do all kinds of things because, yeah. And I don't blame him. It's his kids. He didn't sign up for this. So once you own the Justice Department, this is why Soros puts all this money into the attorney generals and not into the representatives or the senators or anything else. This is the thing that we learned from Barack Obama. If you control the Justice Department, you can get away with anything you want to, because it doesn't matter how much evidence there is of your crime. If the Justice Department declines to pursue the case, then you get away with murder. That's what we saw. We saw that with the Hillary Clinton emails and all the rest of it. If the Justice Department and the state attorney generals, as well as the Attorney General of the United States, if the state attorney generals are owned by the bad guys, and you say we've got videotape evidence or whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter how much evidence there is, doesn't matter how obviously guilty they are. They simply elect to not prosecute the case. So they get away with murder. This is the weakness in our system, is this is prosecutorial discretion. They should not have the power to say, no, we choose not to press charges here. By the way, this is a giant macro scale issue, but on a micro scale, we're seeing this everywhere too with these body cam arrests. You got these people who are third or fourth drunk driving arrest, felony assault on law enforcement officers, reckless driving, reckless endangerment, resisting arrest with violence, all of these things. They go in there looking at least a year's worth of jail time, and you find out that the judge either dismissed the charges completely or walked it down to 6 months probation and 10 hours of community service. And so all these people that finally got contact with reality, telling these cops, "I'm not under arrest." Well, you are. Turns out they go to jail for 4 hours, 5 hours, and then they get out. And that encourages them to do more of it. So if you don't enforce the law, don't be surprised when people break the law. And if they continue to break the law and they just continue to get slapped on the wrist, then this is what you're going to get. I saw one of these body cam footage things just a couple days ago. These three women, a mother and two teenagers, one was her daughter and the other one was her daughter's friend, went into Walmart and they got caught shoplifting $970 worth of material. And once they were apprehended by the police, they started shouting, "Look, we'll pay for the stuff. We're happy to pay for the stuff. I mean, if there's any confusion, we'll pay for it." And the police officer, one of the few who wasn't doing this whole song and dance with them, said, "That's not how it works. You know it doesn't work that way. Get in the car." So you're at the point now where you just assume that the law is not going to be enforced, and if it turns out you have by some miracle the law is enforced and you get arrested for shoplifting, then you pay for then you bring enough money to pay for what you stole. They think that'll get you out of it, and in a lot of cases it does. But in this particular case, the cop said, no, it's not how it works. $1,000 worth of stuff that they shoplifted, and then as they were being hauled away, they started screaming, "We'll pay for it, we'll pay for it." They brought enough money to pay for it. So had enough money to pay for it, didn't just decided not to pay for it, because why would you pay for something when there's no consequences if you just steal it? Pretty simple, really. Roadrunner NM, Sir William of Whittle. Hello to you, sir. Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals is the rule: make the enemy live up to his own book of rules. Yes. Greg Abbott in Texas and Ron DeSantis in Florida have been doing this by busing illegals up to Democrat-run cities that have proclaimed themselves as sanctuary cities. What other things can conservatives do to make progressives live up to their own rules? That was the most brilliant piece of theatrical. It's not theater. Just that was the most brilliant the most brilliant political move I've seen since the 2020 election, was when DeSantis and Abbott said, "Oh, okay, your sanctuary cities, take them all." That was French kiss, masterstroke, and they should not stop doing it, because even the people on the people on The View were saying, "You can't even get around the city anymore. The crime's just so terrible. I don't understand why somebody doesn't do anything about this." So, Joy, you don't want to live in this world of crime and misery, but you're perfectly fine that everybody else in Texas and Florida, California and Arizona, New Mexico, Louisiana, you're fine with them doing it. You just don't want to deal with it yourself. Somebody should have nailed them to the tree rhetorically about this. And so just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Because even they can't escape the consequences of that in terms of their own mental gymnastics, Well, the town's all of a sudden flooded with all these undocumented workers. Yeah, that's right. You're a sanctuary city. We're giving them sanctuary. Now you can live up to your virtue, that you're so much better than the rest of us. Open up the doors and let them in. And that is the only way to deal with it. The thing that was missing was the follow-up punches from Abbott and DeSantis. So Abbott and DeSantis send these refugees up to Martha's Vineyard and all the rest of it. The Martha's Vineyard people say, "Oh, we're so happy to see all these people, new immigrants to America, even though you're here undocumented. Welcome to our country. We're very, very glad to have you here. Now please get on your bus and go someplace else in America, because you really can't stay here. We don't have the room." And New York and all the rest of it. New York declares a federal emergency because they've got some couple hundred of illegal aliens there, and so this is great. But what didn't happen was Abbott and DeSantis didn't get out there and didn't just nail them to the wall. Like, call out the New York mayor, call out the governor of New York, call out The View, call them out and say, "Wait a minute, get on the platform. You've done it. You've done the political jujitsu. Now, take the win. If you're expecting the news to report this, that's not going to happen. So, spike the ball, man. Spike the ball. Do the victory dance. Just come out and say, we don't understand. We've got some real confusion here. Is New York City a sanctuary city or not? The reason we sent them wasn't because we hate New York. The reason we sent them was because they declared themselves a sanctuary city. That's why we sent them there. So if they're not a sanctuary city, then we'll stop sending them there. Which one is it? Make them own it. Make them own it. We don't do that. We get close, but we don't do it. They should have just hammered this and hammered it and never let it go. Never let it go. And not just New York. I would have sent busloads to every sanctuary city. Make them feel the pain. And then, And then, honestly, then they're left with, then these progressive towns are left with, okay, so are we going to live in this hell, or are we going to change our position about being a sanctuary city? That's what they should have forced them to do. They should have made them publicly renounce this sanctuary city idea. And that's not going to be easy. So if I was DeSantis and Abbott, I would have just kept sending them. I wouldn't have slowed down. I would have accelerated. If it turns out that they're complaining about this, I would have said, hey, I'm not the one who declared New York a sanctuary city. You are. So since you're sanctuary city, here comes some more. Here comes some more San Francisco, and more and more and more. Your problem, you take care of them. You're the good guys. We're the evil Nazis. So you show them the love and the acceptance and celebrate their diversity. You just go right ahead and start celebrating their diversity right now, and keep sending them until they're forced to renounce their sanctuary city thing. Then you can administer the death stroke, which is, so you're a sanctuary city, you get to talk about how evil we are and how great you are, as long as it doesn't cost you anything. But once it starts costing you 5 or 10% of what we have to deal with all the time, all of a sudden you're just as racist as the rest of us here. More so, frankly, because we're at least not being hypocritical about it. And this is the thing. It was such a brilliant idea. Nobody knows how to tell a story on this side of the aisle. It's a story. It's a story. Tell the story. What's the story? It's a story of hypocrisy and virtue signaling. It's a real world story. It's a true life story. It really happened. Tell the story. Once you've got somebody off the ropes like that in terms of their behaviors, then close the deal. Close the deal. And no, they didn't. And with individuals like, you get anybody like Joy Behar saying we should allow anybody into this country whenever they want, then the answer to this is for the governor, not some guy, not me, the governor needs to basically say publicly at a press conference, well, we've got this continuing problem. However, I am pleased to say that Joy Behar of The View has offered to basically is in favor of all of this thing. And so I have put a call into her office and asked how many of these immigrants, these undocumented workers, she's willing to take, because she said that she's completely in favor of it. So once we know how many people she's going to house, we will send those people to her house, and then we can start looking for homes for the rest of the people. Call her out and make her make a decision. If I'm Abbott or DeSantis, I would have picked somebody like that, and I would have said the same thing to Gavin Newsom. How many will you take, Governor, in your personal residence? How many will you take? We assume you're going to put them in your personal residence because you say there's room for everybody in California. If you want to add them to your existing homeless cities, who are we to tell you how to run your state? But how many are you going to put up with? I got this right 10, 15 years ago when people like, what's her name? Yeah, I'm really getting worried about this. I'm having problems with names. The faces are very clear. I just hope it's a disc full problem. Jessica Alba. 10, 15 years ago, Jessica Alba was saying the same kind of stuff. How dare you? We don't believe in borders. I don't believe in borders or locked doors. We think that the whole thing is just racism and anti-Hispanic racism, and we think everybody's welcome here. 11 years ago or something, I was saying, okay, Jessica, where do you live? What's your address, and how many people will you be willing to take? Because we both know that if you did that, then you would, if people showed up at your door and said, hi, we're from Venezuela, and since you said we're welcome here, we thought we'd just crash on the couch and got anything in the fridge. Make them be responsible. Accountable is the word. Make them accountable for their rhetoric and their actions. There you go. I don't know what to say about that. You get the idea. All right, let's see. We have two more, I think. Michael Baker. Bill, my question relates to the Gen Z Academy and will you make, and also make you reminisce about your Bermudian school days. Here's the question. Are you familiar with Catherine Burbalsink and the school she set up in a poor part of London? It's called Michaela School and is the subject of a documentary at strictestheadmistress.com. There are small snippets of the documentary on the site. I see great similarities between your idea and what she's achieving. I went to two separate high schools when I was a teenager, and both my houses were blue. Nolan House at Hurstbridge High and Forest House at Melbourne High. All right, Michael, we have a lot in common. Forest was cockhouse for all the 4 years I was there. I don't know what that means. It sounds derogatory, and I'll let you explain that. We're going to see more and more of this. You know, if the government didn't have all this power, this crisis would be easy. We'd get in and out of this crisis very simply. The government would refuse to do things, and so the people would do the things that the government wasn't doing, and we'd correct ourselves quickly with things like this. Tired of your kids, failing their way through high school, can't read, can't speak English, can't write at the end of their high school graduation? Tired of this? Realize that your child is going to be disadvantaged for life now? Yes. Well, then take them over to the school over here. No, you're not allowed to do that. That's where the problem is when the law and the state start getting in the way of citizen solutions to problems. And I think the only answer to this is just to do enough of them and a lot of them so that they're overwhelmed, Just flood the zone. Give them some of the, gosh, I hope it's just because I'm tired. I've forgotten the name of it now. What's that theory by those two Marxists, the something theory where you overwhelm the system? The tip of my tongue is driving me nuts, man. I'm really Cloward Piven, thank you. Yeah, give them their Cloward Piven them. Just here, you want to stop private schools or homeschooling? Here's 10,000 homeschools you're going to have to shut down. And the second you close one, we're going to open another one. That's the only way to deal with it. They're limited by their numbers and they're also limited by their competence, both of which are relatively low. There are certain like if there's a group on I don't know, some group that on a messaging program or something, take YouTube or something like this. Just say there's some kind of content that YouTube doesn't like, so they take everything down. But if the people have a connection to each other, then they can post it again. All of them can post it again. And it takes a while for YouTube to take it all down again. And this is kind of like being Mercury. You're trying to smash Mercury with a hammer, and all you do when you hammer Mercury is you just explode it into hundreds, if not thousands, of drops of mercury, and that's how you have to win this thing. You can't just stand up to them, just move. It's not even running away. It's just, okay, you're going to close this down? Fine. In other words, we can create new networks faster than you can identify them and take them down. That's, I think, the solution. That's the only thing I see right now that looks like a solution to me. And in order for that to happen, you see, this is important. So if let's say there's content, conservative content, whatever, let's say that YouTube is taking down. So you just open up a new account with a new username, post it there. Great. The problem is that the old network had the network effect, had a lot of connections. People came to see it, right? Now you post it again, nobody knows who you are or where you are. But what you can do is you can have a social media presence or a group that is not posting anything that they find to be offensive. It's just a connection group. And that way, when somebody reposts the stuff that people want to watch, they're not actually reposting that stuff. They're just simply saying, hey, you might want to go check something like this. That way, the network effect remains intact, even though the actual network is nuked and then regenerated. So as long as everybody knows to go where to look for the new stuff independent of the old network, if there's a sort of a neutral site that's not posting anything that they can close, it's basically just a, hey, we're just hanging out here. Oh, look at this. Here's a new link. What do you know? Then all of the people that were on the old network that got nuked go over to the new network and they watch their content, and eventually YouTube catches up with them and pulls the content, and then they do it again. This is one thing I learned many years ago on a book called I think it was the Spider and the Starfish, where the more authoritarians try to control something that's on the internet, the more dispersed it gets. The more dispersed it gets, the harder it is to control. And eventually it becomes so dispersed that it's uncontrollable. Like Friendster, right? Wasn't it Friendster? With the music sharing, where you would you'd have a song that you bought, somebody else have a song that they bought, you'd both upload it to Friendster, you'd get their song for free, they get your song for free, everybody gets free music. Okay, that's a way to get around copywriting and revenue and all the rest of it. But since it's all hosted at Friendster, they can shut down Friendster, which is what they did. So then, what they did was they just was it Napster? I keep saying Friendster. Napster. Sorry about that. Sorry everybody. Here comes the 10,000 Napsters. Napster. So, okay, so they shut down the Napster servers and all of that stuff goes. Great. Then what they did was they started dispersing the software to the clients, so it's no longer go to Napster and get your pirated software. Now it's like download this software and it will, on the client side, start looking for other stuff. And then they tried to go after that. And what ended up happening was the more they attacked it, the more dispersed it got. The more dispersed it got, the tougher it was to nail down, to the point where it couldn't be nailed down. So, you know, you gotta not only fight fire with fire, you gotta fight on the battlefield that you've got. And if you can maintain the network independent of the content, then they can kill whatever social media thing has the content. But as long as the network connection is off-site there somehow, or outside of that box. In other words, if you've got this giant, well, I've already explained. You've got 300, 400,000 people who are going to this one particular YouTube content provider because they like what he's saying. And then they nuke that guy. They ban him. Now all of those 300,000 people don't know where to go. But if it turned out that there had been a parallel site that he basically said, look, come on over here and we'll just talk about, fishing. Then when you nuke the site that's got the content people want to see, the phishing site can say, the phishing site's not going to deal with the kind of content, not going to upload the content that's going to get them closed. It's the connection site. That's what it is. It's like a waiting room. And then you can actually kind of you can almost kind of vet out the moles, That's a thought, really, more than anything. Okay, last one here. We got two from Eric Blake. Let's see. Okay, I'll take the first one. From Eric Blake. Man in hat. The man with the hats in the office tonight, come if you want some hope. So, Bill, a recent NBC News poll shows that young voters read 18 to 34, that's both Zoomers and millennials like myself, are going for Trump over Biden 46 to 44. If that's what they're reporting, then you can assume that the numbers are pretty significantly better than that. and other polls showing black men en masse going for the Don. I suspect that the Trump versus the man symbolism of the mugshot may have something to do with that. I'd never considered that before, but I think you may be onto something there. Perhaps, especially regarding the youth vote, the turning for the better is happening sooner than you think. So this is the soft landing. First time chat from the TG Devil, I think. Hey, bro. I don't know if you're talking to me, bro, but hey, bro, back. So let's just look at the best case scenario. Best case scenario is in 2024, Trump wins the presidency, Republicans take the House and the Senate because people have had enough of this stuff. That doesn't solve the problem right off. It's without question much better than not happening. But take Brexit, for example. See, this is the weapon of the bureaucracy, is stalling. So the British people were confronted with a choice of leaving the European Union or not. And the bureaucrats decided, and the unelected officials in the EU and all the rest of them decided, no, Britain should stay inside the EU. So they put it up for a vote, and it turns out that the British public made the wrong choice, that the people made the wrong choice, and so the government said, well, we obviously need new people. So what happened was Brexit was approved, and the government basically said, okay, well, we'll need another 2 years to work this out. We'll have another referendum or something. 2 years for us to, continue to reinforce the message and discredit the competition, all the rest of it. So they basically put off the vote, and then they won again, and at some point they gave up. But basically, if Trump and the Republicans win, and win big, it seems like, hey, problem solved, but it's not. First of all, you got to find enough Republicans who have the spine to do what's going to be necessary to clean this house up. That itself is problematic. You can count on anything that Donald Trump does to start cleaning out this house and draining the swamp being stopped at every turn by some appellate judge on some, circuit someplace somewhere else. The San Francisco Junior Assistant District Attorney is going to put a block on it or whatever the hell. And so they'll just basically try to delay it, run the clock out. And so then the question isn't just winning, it's winning and perseverance and not tiring. It's rust never sleeps, man. Rust never sleeps. You got to mow the lawn every week. And that will never end. You will never get to the point ever when you can say, well, we won, they lost, they're giving up. They will never give up. It's entropy. It's not even politics, it's entropy. It is more difficult to have a rose garden than it is to have a weed garden. And so that requires constant effort, and you can never cease, because if you do, the weeds will take over, period. Are we ready for this? I don't know. I hope so. I suspect so. But you can never, ever get to the point where it's like, okay, we won. They can get to the point where they win. We just get tired and walk away. But entropy is on their side. Gravity's on their side. We're the ones who have to roll the boulder up the hill, and we have to do it every day. All they have to do is just sit there and watch it come right back down again. So we'd better get ready. A Roadrunner says, what does CSR stand for? There was a period back in right around Obama's second term, I want to say, right around 2014-15 when we get started here, where I was talking about something called the common sense resistance. It would basically be exactly what we're talking about tonight. Networks and networks of networks where everybody is basically connected to everybody else, and they're capable of self-assembling solutions. You basically would say, hey, well, what can you do? I can drive a truck, I can do this, I'm a farmer, I can shoe a horse, I can fly an airplane. And then that way, when there's a flood or something and you're waiting for the government to come help, this thing just goes out through the network, and you say, oh, there's a problem, 70 miles away, and they need to get food in there. I've got a small airplane. Another guy says, I've got excess food supplies, or I'm working for this or whatever, and they put the food on the airplane, they fly it there, and it's not top-down centralized at all. It all happens on the fly, and as soon as that problem goes away, that structure just dissolves back into the soup. And and all the components are still there to self-assemble on the next crisis. Is it the I forget the name of the organization? Is it the Alligator Navy, the Gator Navy? I think there's a bunch of people in America, usually in the South, because that's where most of the problems are. And these are individual people who have boats. A lot of people down south have boats. They have boats on trailers. And when they were having all kinds of floods and hurricanes, these guys, the Cajun Navy, these guys would show up. They would just leave their house, fill up their pickup truck with gas and some supplies. They would drive to where the problem was. They'd find some place where the government wasn't in their way. They'd launch their boats, and then they would go out and start rescuing people or supplying people. And this is the answer. I'm not saying it's not nice to have a airlift capability like that the United States has or stuff, but it'd be nice to do that. But when the government is in the way, it's things like the Cajun Navy that will be our salvation. They just can't stop everybody. It's like, we're going to go in and help. We're just going to go help. We're just going to do it. And we're not going to, not only, it's not even a question of waiting, we're not going to wait for the government. It's that we're not going to let the government stop us from helping. This I think is the fulcrum of the problems that we're going to be facing. It's not that we can't handle the solutions that the government will no longer be able to provide. It's that the government will do everything in their power using the coercive power of the state to stop us from doing what citizens need to do. And we're not talking about anything illegal. This is a great example. They will start to arrest people who are going in to rescue people because they were not being rescued by the official rescue team, which was provided by the Democratic governor who turns out that 17 of the 20 boats that were necessary have been missing, and he's got a brand new Lincoln Navigator, that kind of thing. So it's got to be, there's a practical problem. Take the Cajun Navy as an example. It's a practical problem if somebody's trying to stop the Cajun Navy from doing what they've been doing. But ultimately, the win comes from who's telling the story of the Cajun Navy to the rest of the country. Because there's hardly anybody in the country who would not be sympathetic to the idea that these people came of their own. They put hundreds, if not thousands of dollars of their own money into rescuing people, saving lives of people like you. And Joe Biden told them they have to turn around and go home, threatened to shoot them. Who's telling that story? That's what you have to do. That's what you have to do. You have to tell that story. It's the same thing with the sanctuary city things. Great, you found a solution. Fantastic. That's a practical solution, but you're dealing with the power of the state up against you. You've got to be able to narrate them out of the picture. You've got to make it so obvious that even their most ardent supporters are saying, this is nuts. And Eric's point about young people and blacks, and I suspect Hispanics and all the rest of them, is a great point. Look, I was going to talk about this some during the show. I'm done for the night, but we can keep this for next time or whatever. I don't want to call them the enemy because it's not a civil war. We're not talking about the Civil War, but the largest supply of combatants for the forces that are opposed to freedom, the largest pool of recruits are going to be, if they're not already, single, white, wealthy, educated women in their 30s and 40s. That's going to be the backbone of the opposition. I guarantee it. Black voters will leave the Democratic Party before they do. Hispanics will leave the Democratic Party before they do. Even younger people will leave the Democratic Party before they do. The one demographic that is literally married to the Democratic Party are young, liberal, single white women. Those are going to be, that's going to be their go-to demographic, because they've got no alternatives. Black America has its problems, so does everybody else with all these other sectors, but wealthy white women don't just have a problem with economics. It's not like they need the food stamps. It's not like they need all these other things. Their identity is defined by dependence on the government. That's who they are. It's not what they need. It's who they are. and they're getting more and more and more insane, and they're going to be the one. They're going to be the bitter enders in this. I really think they are. It's not going to be the people who need welfare. It's going to be the people who need to be champions of welfare. That's who the bitter enders are going to be. Yeah, Karen wants to speak to the manager, and there's a lot of stuff out there now about women hitting the wall and all the rest of it. This is just the beginning of a mass psychosis event that's going to happen when all of these tens of millions of women who've been told that, yeah, go out and be the boss bitch and slut around a lot, and don't worry, your Prince Charming is going to drop from the sky. You're absolutely perfect the way you are. You're a perfect princess. Don't settle for less. The man of your dreams is just around the corner. He'll find you any minute. All these women are giving advice to other women to make themselves feel good, and none of it has anything to do with reality, and that's going to be a tough nut to crack. I mentioned this, I think, last show in Stratosphere Studio. If you have somebody like that who's that delusional, and they've got real friends, the real friends will say, listen, Judy, you may think that Dan's, that Dan needs some work, and I know, Dan, and you're right, but if you think that you can just go out there into the dating pool at 37 with 2 kids and everything's going to be better than this, you're out of your mind. That's what real friends do, but they're not dealing with real friends anymore. Now what happens is that same woman will go to Reddit groups or TikTok or whatever, and they'll start talking about all the things that Dan has done that really, really are unfair to her, and she will get all of the endorphin hits and all of the, oh, you go girl kind of thing. Oh, how can you possibly stay another day with that horrible, horrible man? And they will convince this individual, because they will tell her what she wants to hear, that you're right, you don't have to do anything, you don't have to change, it's not your fault, it's his fault. You're bored, you want out of the marriage, get out of the marriage, go ahead and leave. You'll be much happier when you do. Wait till you see how much fun you're going to have when you're free. And this is not me making this up, it's happening all the time. All the time this is happening every day. And then these women go out there, get divorced, and they have a couple, they don't even have a couple weeks or months of having fun anymore now. The dating pool now is so unbelievably toxic that that I'm seeing just so many videos of women who like, I can't believe I divorced my husband. I can't believe I did it. Well, you did. And he's not taking you back. You've broken his heart, and you've broken his trust, and he's not taking you back. And none of the friends that you used to have like you anymore, because they know you were the one who walked out on the relationship. They know that he was a good man. Maybe he was a little boring. Maybe he was a little whatever. That's what marriage is. You made a promise, and you broke it. And now you're out there, and, enjoy your life without the bicycle, little fishy. So this is going to be a major, 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 major problem, and there are tens of millions of women who live under this delusion that, and the problem is that every day that goes by, they get more desperate, and the more desperate they get, the more they cling to the belief, the delusion, in not because of the evidence, but despite the evidence. The more evidence there is that they're wrong, the more they want to believe that they're right. And Roadrunner's has been married for 43 years, best 12 years of my life. That's how marriage works, apparently. And I'm coming up on my 7th anniversary, which is by no means a lifetime, but it's not 18 months either. So, yeah, and Caledon Society's got it. What these women expect now, they've been told this lie for so long. They've not only been told that you can be the boss of your own company, and you can have the car and the expensive thing, you get the boss man around, and you're not dependent on anybody, you're a strong, independent woman and stunning and brave, you don't need anybody for anything, certainly don't need a man for anything. And when these women start looking for men, they find that they want the sixes. They want the six-pack abs, they want the 6 figures, and they want 6 feet or taller. And they will not change their expectations. And they are 4s, 5s, and 6s that are chasing 9s. And the 9s, in terms of the men, are not going to be going after 33, 37-year-old single moms with 2 kids. They're going to be going after 24-year-olds, 27-year-olds. And this is making the 30, 40-year-old women insane. And so men are going overseas because when they go to other countries, they don't get boss bitches and they don't get all of this hatred and all this resentment and all of this, it's all your fault. They get women who are, by some freak of cultural insanity, think that the job of a wife is to make her husband happy and give him a pleasant place to live rather than have somebody to bitch at and pay for everything. This is we're heading for a big collision, and it's going to be look, here's what I'll just close the show with. Right? This is what I think the next crisis is going to be, and that's bad news. The good news is I would rather face 10,000 Karens than 100 Japanese aviators or 100 Wehrmacht officers. On the scale of personal danger, this is annoying. It's not an existential threat to me. A nation of Karens in full meltdown is not likely to be a physical threat to me, but it's also, to say it's not a societal crisis is just nuts. You've got half the population's been lied to for 2 generations, and we are going to be in a mental health crisis. It's going to be like the yellow fever epidemic, except it's not going to be yellow fever. It's going to be neuroses, psychoses, addiction problems, anger problems, acting out problems, full-grown adults who have the emotional structure of 4-year-olds, and it's not gonna end well. I've been watching a lot of these women who are mystified, just absolutely flabbergasted, not just stunned, but also furious at men for saying that the fact that you've slept with 200 guys affects my decision on whether or not I want to marry you or not. They're just, how dare you? We're not the ones who devalued your assets. We didn't do that. You did that. You told you could have anything you want to. You slept your way through your 20s. Now you're looking at getting back out into the dating pool, and no one's interested. And instead of them taking responsibility for it and making changes, they're just getting more and more angry and more delusional, and it's going to be, it's going to be a challenge. So, we'll see. Frank Bleskowitz says one of the biggest risk factors for divorce is when one of her friends gets divorced. Yes. And so these women who are either in marriages, they're mostly, look, if they were in abusive marriages, that'd be an entirely different story. No one's suggesting that at all. But most of the time, they're just bored. They're just bored. And they're not feeling the thrill anymore. Well, welcome to the world, This is what marriage is. It's like, you should know this going into it. He doesn't give me the butterflies anymore. Well, I'm sure you don't give him the butterflies anymore either. But that's not what marriage is. Not about the butterflies. It's about what's beyond the butterflies, which is much better. But the glue is so weak now. I'm going to save this for the next show because it's something I want to talk about. But this business about, look, I was born in 59, and I am probably 1/3 of the way to where things are now. My parents and grandparents had a more sane and long-lasting process for forming families and having children than I do, but I'm 2/3 of the way better than what's going on out there now. But basically, the short form is, when you have, I don't even hear people talking about dating sites anymore. I haven't heard any of them mention anything like Match.com. I had some good experiences on Match.com before I met my wife. Now it's all about apps, swipe right, swipe left, and women are just in a state of absolute panic because they're getting stood up for the first time in their lives. And they're getting ghosted for the first time in their lives. And mostly, they're dealing with guys that just want to, just smash them. Just, hang out with them, Netflix and chill. Okay, great. We really had a great connection. I really felt something. Yeah, I did too. Can't wait to see you again. Ghosted. Gone. They don't know what to do. But it's women that reduce their value to a swipe left, swipe right equation. This is kind of the guy's dream world on some biological level. But also on a biological level, there's 10% of the men on these dating apps that are going out with whoever they want to, and 90% of the men aren't going out with anybody because the women are all looking for the six packs, the six figures, and the 6 foot height, and those guys are just like sharks in a giant ball of sardines. They just can't flick a fin without knocking something over. What I was getting at with the glue is, when I think about like my grandparents and all of human history prior to that, at least Western history for hundreds of years, you had to make an investment. Everybody, men and women both want to have sex when they're, especially when you're young and you're full of hormones. That's what everybody wants. But if it's socially unacceptable, then both parties have to work at it. The man has to do all of the romancing, and he's got to come back again and again over the course of months, if not years, in order to convince this woman that he is the one guy who loves her and who will be there forever. And she has to basically hold off her desires and feelings and wait until she's sure about the guy. And then by the time they get married, they're often either the only partners that they've ever had or one of two or three tops, including the men. And so they've had to wait for a year or two for this one thing that people get in the first. I almost said that the men and women get in the first 15 minutes of a date, but that's not true anymore. Now the hookup happens before they meet. That's what these dating apps are. You swipe right, they swipe right. The hookup that people should be waiting for years, if not months, if not years of having to prove something, that happens before they even meet each other, before they even text each other. They know what's going to happen. So, you want to reduce all of this to that, then that's what you get. That's what you get. No one takes me seriously. I can't find a good man. No kidding. Really? That's a shock. Imagine my surprise. Yeah, this guy was really terrific. He was really handsome. He had all this money. And he was kind to me, and he opened the door for me, and he pulled out my chair at the dinner table, and we had a wonderful evening. It was like magic and so on, and I just am crazy about the guy. And then 2 days later is another TikTok video saying we were supposed to meet tonight at 8:00, and I'm waiting outside the restaurant, and he didn't show up. I went to text him, and my texts are blocked. He completely ghosted me. He didn't care. He didn't care. He didn't care because he didn't have to care. He got what he wanted. He doesn't care about you. He's looking for some fun. He got it. You're the one who devalued your value. It's not impossible to get married in this day and age. It's just impossible to do it in your 30s and 40s, which everybody says is what you should. Wait till you're ready. Wait till you're financially secure. Wait till this. It doesn't work that way, apparently. The path to, even today, among the wreckage of society out there, the pathway to happy marriage now is still for people in their mid to late 20s who have graduated high school, who spend a lot of time with each other, who make each other wait. And then the way you get a successful man to stay with you for your entire life is if you help him build his life. Like Drew was talking about this. We were talking about how Daily Wire was coming down on Pearl, which I thought was crazy unfair, because Pearl was just basically saying this is what the situation's like out there. But when Drew was talking about his wife and how happy he was that he was married, the thing he said that really clued me in on this was, he said, been married, 40 years or something like this. And he said, and she was there when I was nothing, She was there when I was an unknown writer. She believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. She earned it. And she was a virtuous woman. He's an honorable man. There's nothing going to pull those two apart from each other. Where is that today? There's nothing even resembling that at all today. At all. Nothing even close to that. It's just if it's this easy to connect, it's that easy to disconnect. The harder you have to work to get something, the more value it has to you, and the harder you hold on to it. It's not a mystery. So we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, I think I'm about done here. Yeah, I'm done. Yeah. Trump, this is what he's fat guy said. 40 years, yeah, women aren't like that anymore. They're not like that anymore. They've been poisoned. They've been poisoned by the feminist message. They've been it's all about envy. Women wanted the things that men have because the things that men have in society are obvious. The things that men have to do in society are not obvious. Their prerogatives are clear and desirable, but their obligations and their responsibilities are under the ground. And women want the freedom of men. They want the authority of men. They want they want all of these things that they see men having, but they don't want to pay any of the price for it. They don't want to be out there in the mud in a foxhole. They don't want to be the one to go out in the yard when there's a strange noise. They don't want the one to go get the spider out of the bathroom. They just want it all, and they're not willing to. It's a smorgasbord for them. It's I'll take that, I'll take that, I'll take that. Don't want that. Bill Burr got that actually really done. Really nailed it. I want somebody to take care of me. Of course you do. That's what you're wired for. That's what all females of every species are wired for. But I want to be strong and independent, and I don't need anybody to make up your mind. Make up your mind. Do you want somebody to take care of you or not? Yes. But I also want to be strong and independent. Pick one, and then they're picking the ones that are ending up making them psychotic, because they've been told that their best future is one that is in direct violation of their biology by other bitter women, most of whom don't even realize that they're as miserable as everybody they're giving their advice to. Anyway, you get the idea. All right, so how about that? It is 2 hours and 36 minutes of the Stratosphere Lounge. Where are we going for the eclipse? I don't know. It's an idea. It'd be a fun idea, actually, to see if we could do like an eclipse meeting. That'd be cool. Yes, I think we're going to Texas. I believe is Uvalde on the path? I think Phil mentioned something about that. I'll tell you one thing. Wherever it is, I want to go someplace where there's not going to be clouds. I do not want. Yes, Marisha, we are. Although I'm not ready just yet. Hopefully in the next couple of days. I need to get my email back first. I don't want. There's nothing I can imagine worse than going to an eclipse and having it be cloudy. I think that would I would lose my mind over that. I really think that would do it. That'd be the thing. Where Bill's gone. They broke Bill. Yeah, set the time and place soon. It's a good idea. I'll talk to some friends and see where we're going, and then we'll make it public, and we'll do it like the Air Force Museum. It'll be kind of fun. All right, there we go. So that'll do it for this edition of Stratosphere Lounge, which I need to catch up on and get these things up online. A lot of things I have to do. Sorry if they've been having some problems with the website. We did our very best. We're continuing to do our best, and doing our best is the best we can do. This show is made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com, who, as you probably know by now, make all of this wonder possible. And I've got a couple final things coming to get these things mounted and new lamps and stuff, so hopefully we'll start seeing some action on this soon, now that this 6-week, formerly 3-day process of getting the website up appears to at least be mostly behind us. Okay, so that'll do it. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you probably Monday night. But certainly next Thursday night, right here on your very own Stratosphere Lounge Show. Hooray! Okay, YouTube. We'll see you. Have a good thing, whatever the thing is. Day, night. We're listened to all around the world. 24 hours. The sun never sets on the Stratosphere Lounge.